DayZ just revealed everything we need to know about base building coming to the game soon, and holy crap, no one saw most of this coming. So here I'll break it down and then show you how to build it back up. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
And die. Well, that's embarrassing.
DayZ Badlands isn't just a new map, it's the ability for players to rebuild parts of the world, and until now, base building has mostly meant placing fences, gates and watchtowers around existing buildings or in open fields. The world itself never really changed. Badlands introduces a completely different idea. Instead of simply moving buildings next to buildings, you'll be able to repair certain damaged houses and turn them into bases themselves. According to the developers, the entire goal is to make every server develop differently over time. They want players to leave permanent marks on the map so that two servers no longer look the same after a few days of play. And honestly, they have some really interesting ideas here. The developers gave a few examples of what they meant. One server, players might completely rebuild a town close to the spawn area to defend it as a large community. On another server, the exact same town might still be full of ruined buildings. Basically, they want an organic survival building mechanic that allows players to customize areas. And they've done it in such a way that there is so many different types of combinations you can use on each server. And this even affects things like the wells. Some wells will begin broken and won't provide drinking water until players repair them. One group of players might fix every well they find to help everyone on the server, other players might ignore them completely. And no doubt some players are gonna build bases around these wells so nobody else can use them. Just throwing that out there. The developers say this system is designed so players gradually change the environment simply by playing. I'm going to dub this organic environmental gameplay. Not every house can be rebuilt though. Only specific damaged houses have this feature. There are around 20 different versions of these damaged houses spread across Nasdara. And yes, this will only be accessible on the Nasdara map. The developers said that during their recent LAN event, most players recognized these buildings almost immediately. One clue is that when you open your inventory inside one of these buildings, you'll see the rebuilding interface. After spending some time on the map, players will naturally learn to recognize them just by looking at them. Now, they said that there are two main styles of rebuildable houses: mud houses and stone houses. This is mainly for storytelling. According to the developers, mud houses belong to ordinary people, while stone houses belong to wealthier families before the region fell into conflict. This difference is purely cosmetic though, and both houses will have the same health, so stone houses are not naturally stronger, they're not harder to raid, they simply tell a different story about who lived there before the war. So it's more environmental storytelling than anything else. Furthermore, every house needs a different amount of work. Not every damaged house starts in the same condition. Some houses only have slight damage. Other houses may need a new door and a few windows before they're usable, but then you encounter different houses that may be heavily destroyed. These can require rebuilding walls, replacing large sections of the roof, and using far more materials before they're finished. The amount of work depends entirely on how badly damaged the building is. This is interesting because it does mean that people will pick their locations of their base based on whether or not they require a lot of building resources, because that can make a difference to strategy and probably get you killed while you're trying to build them. Next thing you need to know is you don't have to restore everything. One of the biggest features is that rebuilding is completely optional. You are never forced to fully repair a building. Instead, you choose which parts you want to rebuild. For example, you can repair just one room. You can block one entrance completely while leaving another entrance completely usable. You could install doors in one part of the house while leaving other sections destroyed. The developers described this as giving players freedom to manage their resources however they want. And this is even more impressive when you realize just how many houses there are, because this isn't a feature limited to a handful of locations. The developers say there are over 5,000 rebuildable houses placed across Nasdara. Where these houses are located is also intentional. Building closer to towns and cities are generally less damaged and fewer materials needed to repair, but building in remote countryside areas are usually in much worse condition, requiring way more resources and a lot more time. The developers say they deliberately designed it this way. The houses that require the most work are often in quieter areas with less player traffic, making them attractive places to build a base if you're willing to spend the time repairing them. But why restore a house at all? You might be asking why anyone would spend time rebuilding a ruined house when there are already plenty of normal buildings. Well, the developers gave two reasons. The first is obvious. You can build a base in locations that weren't previously possible. The second is that damaged houses contain rubble. When you clear away the rubble during During the rebuilding process, you receive building materials in return, which is a brand new system we haven't seen in DayZ officially. So restoring a building also gives you some of the resources needed for restoring the building. And there are, of course, new resources you can use. So there's new building materials. Because to support rebuilding in general, Badlands introduces new construction materials. The biggest additions are bricks and mortar, and a new tool called the trowel is being added to work with these materials. I wish they gave us more hints on what this trowel could be, but I just can't crack that code. Existing materials aren't being replaced. Players can still use logs, wooden planks, and metal sheets as part of the rebuilding process. However, this is a new system on top of what already exists. And now there are also different ways to rebuild, and they've shown several different ways players can restore or secure buildings. You can rebuild sections using wood, you can rebuild them using brick, you can reinforce windows and doors using wood together with sheet metal, or you can completely block a doorway by building a brick wall across it. These options can also be mixed together. You're not limited to just one. For example, one wall can be brick while another is wood, depending on how and what materials you decide to use. Sort of like the normal base building where you can use metal sheets or wood. You can just mix and match. And houses won't all look the same. Even when two players rebuild the same type of house, they may still end up looking completely different. That's because houses can begin in different damage states, and players can choose their materials, as I've just mentioned, and they don't have to be restored in a specific way, or pieces can just be ignored completely. The result is that two bases built from the same houses can end up looking completely different. And of course, they did say there are official code locks, which we knew anyway. The code lock can be attached to the new rebuildable doors as well as existing base building gates and fences, meaning we will see them across all servers. However, the code locks do need power. Unlike a normal padlock, the code lock needs electricity. It requires a charged V9 battery to work. If the battery runs out of power, the lock automatically unlocks. Players will need to check the battery occasionally to make sure their base stays secure. The battery level can be checked by looking at the back of the lock while it's attached indoors. I'll have more information on this when it drops, and I'll tell you how long the battery will last and whether or not using the door continually will affect it as well. And you also need to repair the code lock because it can be damaged when it isn't attached to a door. This means you can't shoot through doors to try and damage the code lock and then get through it. While it's there, it will likely be invulnerable. But if it does become damaged, players can repair it using an electrical repair kit. And then once it's attached, you won't have to repair it again. But if you're a little bit let down by the repairing and the battery, don't be, because there is one addition to this code lock that is really cool. The developers have added protection against players who repeatedly try random pin combinations. After too many incorrect attempts, the lock temporarily stops accepting new code entries. If players continue trying to guess the code, its protection period becomes longer. The protection resets if somebody enters the correct code, so you will never be hurt by it. It also resets if enough time passes or the lock is unlocked from the inside of the building. This prevents players from endlessly trying random combinations until they eventually get lucky, though I imagine they will be there for a long time. But what do you think about this information? Let me know in the comments, and for more DayZ content, click here, or for something else, click here. And as always, until next time.